The Empire had once seemed eternal. Across the glittering stars, the alien Empress ruled with grace and power, her authority unquestioned for centuries. Her people had loved her, or at least respected her, and her advisors had followed her every command. But the tide of loyalty is a fragile thing, and when the first cracks appeared, the entire foundation began to tremble. In the great throne hall, golden lights reflected off the polished floors, casting long shadows from the towering pillars. The hall was filled with alien nobles and diplomats from distant planets, their voices soft murmurs of politics and strategy. At the center of it all sat the Empress herself, a figure of regal presence. Her scales shimmered in the light, a mix of deep emerald and violet, and her eyes held a wisdom that spanned centuries. Yet even as she sat upon her throne, a subtle unease had begun to stir. She glanced at her council, the very beings who had sworn to protect her reign. Their eyes avoided hers, flicking to one another in anxious silence. Something had changed. She could feel it, a shift in the air, a quiet tension that whispered betrayal. "I do not understand," the Empress said, her voice calm but firm. "Why do I sense hesitation?" "Speak, my advisors." A counselor stepped forward, his elongated limbs trembling slightly. His voice was smooth, almost soothing, but it carried a weight that chilled her. "Your Majesty, the galaxy changes. New alliances, new powers. Humans are expanding, and some of us believe it is time for a leader who can adapt to these changes. One who is more practical." The words hit her like ice. "Practical?" she asked, her tone carrying a quiet warning. "Do you mean that you doubt my judgment?" Another counselor, a tall figure with silver feathers cascading from her shoulders, spoke quickly. "It is not doubt, Your Majesty. We only seek the best for the Empire. Survival requires difficult choices. Some of us believe that abandonment," the Empress finished, her voice soft but sharp. She looked around at the council, seeing for the first time the hesitation, the fear, and the quiet desire to leave her side. Her advisors, who had once seemed unshakable, were deserting her now. And yet, one figure remained at the edge of the hall. A human. Elias. He was young by alien standards, barely an adult in his 20s, but his presence was solid, unwavering. Unlike the alien counselors, he did not bow or avert his gaze. He simply stood there, a quiet determination in his brown eyes. Humans were often underestimated in this empire. They were seen as fragile, short-lived, and weak. Yet here he was, a human refusing to abandon the Empress when every other being had. The Empress's eyes softened as she noticed him. "You, human, why do you remain?" she asked, her voice more curious than accusatory. Elias stepped forward, keeping his posture respectful but firm. "Because, Your Majesty, loyalty is not about convenience. It is about standing beside those who need it most." There was a pause. The council shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. Loyalty. A human speaking of loyalty in a world where betrayal had become routine. The Empress studied him, seeing not only courage but an understanding of honor, something she had long thought unique to her kind. "Very well," she said finally. "Then you shall remain. But know this, the path ahead is perilous. Those who betray me will not hesitate to destroy anyone who stands in their way." "I understand," Elias replied simply. The Empress nodded. In that moment, a fragile alliance was born, not from politics nor from shared power, but from mutual respect and understanding. One human and one Empress alone against the tides of betrayal. As the council departed, whispers of rebellion and power struggles echoing behind them, the Empress and Elias were left alone in the throne hall. The silence was heavy, but it was not empty. It was filled with the possibility of courage, the quiet hum of determination that sometimes rises in the hearts of the few who refuse to surrender. Over the next hours, Elias walked beside the Empress through the corridors of her palace, observing the emptiness that had replaced the once bustling life of the court. The halls were grand, adorned with alien artwork and shimmering fabrics, but they now felt hollow. Guards had deserted, servants had left, and even the palace drones moved with a hesitance that mirrored the uncertainty of the empire itself. "Your Majesty," Elias said carefully, "the palace is vulnerable. We cannot rely on loyalty from those who have already turned away." The Empress nodded, her eyes scanning the long corridors. "I know. I had always believed that duty and honor would guide my people. I did not expect so many to abandon me at the first sign of doubt. Sometimes leaders must stand alone, Elias said quietly, "until others see the truth of their strength." The Empress considered this. She had spent centuries learning the art of ruling, understanding politics, and negotiating with rival species. And yet, she realized that she had never truly understood the value of human loyalty. It was not bound by fear or reward. It was a choice, a steadfast decision to remain even when the world turns away. As night fell over the palace, the city outside continued its indifferent hum. Alien ships flew past in the distance, traders and diplomats moving through the stars, unaware of the quiet rebellion within the Empress's own walls. And inside, a single human remained a silent guardian, offering not strength of arms but strength of heart. Over the following days, the Empress began to test Elias's resolve. She placed him in situations that would reveal whether he was truly loyal or merely stubborn. When a minor explosion occurred in one of the palace wings, likely sabotage from a disgruntled faction, Elias reacted swiftly, saving several palace assistants and guiding the Empress to safety. He did not hesitate even when danger loomed close, proving that human courage was not a myth. The Empress watched him, curiosity growing into admiration. Humans, she had thought, were fragile and limited in their understanding of complex civilizations. Yet Elias displayed strategic thinking, courage, and an emotional strength that many of her alien subjects lacked. In a way, he reminded her of herself centuries ago, idealistic, determined, and unafraid to stand alone when necessary. Word of the Council's betrayal spread quickly throughout the Empire. Carried by whispering couriers and hidden networks, many species began to doubt the Council's wisdom, seeing the Empress not as a weak ruler but as one tested by betrayal. And always at her side stood the human who had refused to leave. Elias did not seek glory nor recognition. He simply acted quietly, with unwavering loyalty. One evening, as the twin moons of the planet rose over the horizon, the Empress and Elias stood on the palace balcony, gazing out at the city below. The lights twinkled like scattered stars, but beneath the beauty lay tension and uncertainty. "Do you think the Empire will accept me again?" the Empress asked softly, her voice tinged with doubt. Elias looked at her, steady and calm. "I do not know, Your Majesty. But I know this. You do not need everyone's acceptance to do what is right. You need courage, wisdom, and someone willing to stand by you, and that I promise you will always have from me." The Empress felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mixture of hope and relief. In that single human, she had found a kind of loyalty that transcended politics, ambition, and fear. For the first time in centuries, she felt that perhaps even in a galaxy full of betrayal, she might not be entirely alone. And so, in a palace once echoing with abandonment, a human remained. A human who refused to flee when others faltered. A human who stood beside an alien Empress, ready to face the uncertain future together. The stars beyond the balcony seemed to shimmer in approval. Or perhaps it was just her imagination. Either way, a bond had been formed. A bond that would shape the fate of an empire. The Empress turned to Elias. "Thank you," she said simply. Not for his actions, but for his presence, for the courage to remain when all others had left. Elias smiled faintly. "It is the least a human can do," he said, "especially for someone worth standing beside." In the quiet that followed, the palace no longer felt empty. It was filled with possibility, loyalty, and the first faint glimmer of hope. And so the stage was set. An empire on the brink of collapse, a council turned traitorous, and in the eye of it all, a human standing steadfastly beside an alien Empress, ready to face whatever the galaxy would throw at them next. The palace that had once been alive with the sounds of footsteps, voices, and laughter, now felt empty. The grand halls echoed with silence, the shadows stretching long across marble floors. The Empress walked slowly, her claws lightly brushing the golden rails of the balcony, gazing at the city below. Her mind was heavy with doubt, yet somewhere deep inside a flicker of resolve remained. At her side, Elias matched her pace. The human moved carefully but with a quiet confidence. He had grown accustomed to the palace's strange technologies, the alien architecture, and even the subtle ways in which the Empress communicated her thoughts without words. He had proven himself capable of thinking quickly and acting decisively, even in the face of danger. Yet his loyalty had always remained steady and calm. "Your Majesty," Elias said, breaking the silence. We cannot rely on loyalty from those who abandoned us. If we are to survive, we must rely on our own abilities and trust in the truth of our actions. The Empress nodded slowly. I know, Elias. I had always believed that those who owed loyalty would honor it no matter the circumstances. But I have learned that fear and ambition can cloud judgment, even among my own council. Elias looked at her, his brown eyes steady. Then we adapt. We find those who are still willing to follow reason and fairness. We use wisdom, not fear, to regain what has been lost. For the first time in days, the Empress allowed herself a small smile. It was not relief nor joy, but a recognition that she had found in this human something rare: steadfastness. In a galaxy where betrayal had become common, loyalty was extraordinary. The next morning, the Empress and Elias began moving through the palace, inspecting areas that had been neglected during the chaos. Hallways that once rang with life now stood deserted, the palace drones operating only at a minimal level. Servants who had stayed behind eyed them nervously, whispering of the council's betrayal and the rumors of exile. Do not let fear guide your actions, the Empress said, addressing both Elias and the remaining staff. We will rebuild trust, but it will not come from intimidation or threats. It will come from understanding and integrity, Elias nodded, and courage. People respect those who face danger rather than run from it. As they spoke, a soft vibration ran through the floor, the signal that the palace communication system had been hacked. Aliens from the council's faction were sending warnings and false orders, trying to create confusion. Yet Elias moved quickly, analyzing the patterns of the transmissions and tracing them back to their source. Within minutes, he had isolated the signals, blocking the malicious commands. The Empress observed silently, impressed. Humans often relied on instinct rather than precision, but Elias combined instinct with reasoning. He acted decisively, solving problems with limited information, something even her most loyal advisors had struggled to do. Impressive, she said quietly. You are not like other humans I have met. You are capable in ways I did not expect. Elias gave a small shrug. We are often underestimated, Your Majesty, but we adapt. That is how humans survive. The Empress considered this. Perhaps underestimation was not always a weakness. Perhaps it was an advantage, a hidden strength that could be used to outmaneuver those who relied too heavily on tradition or fear. Days passed in the palace, each filled with careful observation and preparation. Elias worked alongside the Empress, learning about the Empire's weaknesses and the plots that had been quietly forming against her. Alien factions that had once followed her instructions without question now plotted openly, thinking she was powerless without her counsel. Yet they underestimated the human at her side. One evening, as the twin moons cast silver light over the empty courtyard, Elias and the Empress observed a group of traitors moving through the outer corridors. They planned to sabotage the palace defenses tonight, Elias said quietly. If we do not act, they may destroy everything. The Empress nodded, her expression serious. Then we must be ready. But we will not strike first. We will observe, gather evidence, and expose them for all to see. The Empire needs to witness their betrayal openly. It will remind the people of the difference between loyalty and ambition, Elias agreed. And in the meantime, we must protect those who remain. Even a few loyal citizens can make a difference. Over the next several hours, they moved silently through the palace. Elias guided the Empress through hidden corridors, using his human intuition to anticipate ambushes. They found sabotage devices planted near power cores and security stations. Elias carefully dismantled them, explaining the human logic behind each action. You see, Your Majesty, he said, sometimes fear makes beings predictable. They assume you will panic or flee, but we humans often act without hesitation, relying on reason and instinct. That can give us an advantage, the Empress listened, absorbing the lesson. Her empire had always relied on intelligence and strategy, yet she had never considered that raw determination and moral courage could also be a powerful tool. She began to see that humans were not simply fragile creatures. They were beings capable of extraordinary loyalty and cleverness, especially when driven by purpose. The first attack came shortly after midnight. A group of traitorous soldiers moved toward the palace gates, intending to trap the Empress inside. Elias anticipated their path, signaling to the Empress to stay back while he prepared a diversion. Using his understanding of human and alien mechanics, he manipulated the palace defense drones, creating a series of holographic illusions that confused the attackers. The traitors stumbled, unsure where to advance. Elias used the chaos to guide the Empress safely through a hidden passage, away from the danger. She could feel the tension in the air, the electric charge of fear and hope intertwined. "You are remarkable," she whispered as they paused in the shadows. Elias shook his head. "I only do what is necessary. You taught me that courage is not about being fearless, but about acting despite fear." The Empress considered his words. Perhaps that was why he remained at her side when everyone else had fled. Humans could face danger with a clarity that her own species sometimes lacked. They could act not out of obligation but out of choice, and that made all the difference. By dawn, the immediate threat had passed. The palace gates were secure once more, and the traitors had retreated. Yet the Empress knew this was only the beginning. The council had abandoned her, and now they would attempt to seize power at every opportunity. But she also knew she was no longer alone. Elias remained at her side not because of duty or reward, but because he had chosen to stay. That choice resonated deeper than any decree or command. It was a reminder that even in the darkest times, loyalty and courage could light a path forward. As the sun rose over the alien city, painting the towers and streets in shades of gold and violet, the Empress stood at her balcony once more. Elias joined her, scanning the horizon. "Do you think we can reclaim the trust of the Empire?" she asked softly. Elias smiled faintly. "I do not know how long it will take. But I do know this. We will show them what loyalty, courage, and determination can achieve. And in time, the truth will shine brighter than any lies or betrayal." The Empress nodded. For the first time in weeks, she felt hope. The Empire may have turned against her. Her council may have deserted her. But she had one human at her side who refused to abandon her. One human who reminded her that courage was not a matter of species, it was a matter of choice. And so, in the quiet halls of a palace that had seen better days, the Empress and Elias began their first steps toward reclaiming the Empire. The journey would be long, filled with danger, deception, and tests of loyalty. But for the first time, she knew she had a chance, not because of power nor fear, but because of the human who stood unwaveringly by her side. The stars above shone with distant light, silent witnesses to the bond forming between a human and an alien Empress, and somewhere in that light perhaps the galaxy was already beginning to take notice. The city outside the palace glimmered under the twin moons, but the beauty of the lights could not mask the tension that gripped the Empire. Rumors of betrayal and rebellion spread through the streets like wildfire. Citizens whispered in hushed tones about the council's disloyalty, and some even speculated that the Empress herself might vanish forever. Yet inside the palace walls, a different story unfolded, one of quiet planning, courage, and a human's unwavering loyalty. Elias and the Empress moved through the hidden corridors beneath the palace, pathways known only to a few. The air was thick with the scent of alien metals and faint electrical hums, and the shadows twisted in shapes that seemed almost alive. Despite the silence, danger lingered in every corner. The traitors who had abandoned the Empress were not idle. They plotted, schemed, and sent agents to spy, sabotage, and undermine her at every opportunity. "Elias," the Empress said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, "how much do we know about their plans?" The human paused, crouched near a control panel embedded in the wall. His fingers danced over alien symbols, tracing communication lines and scanning for unusual activity. "They're coordinating attacks across several districts. They plan to destabilize the city and pin the blame on your leadership. If we do not act carefully, chaos will spread before we can stop it." The Empress considered this. "And yet they underestimate us," she said, almost to herself. "They think the human at my side is incapable of understanding our ways." "They are wrong." Elias looked up, meeting her gaze. "That's the advantage humans have. We are not bound by tradition, pride, or fear of the unknown. We act when it is necessary, and that gives us opportunities others do not see." The Empress nodded. In the silence of the corridors, she felt a renewed determination. She had ruled for centuries, and yet she had never fully appreciated the value of someone who chose loyalty freely, without obligation. Elias's presence reminded her that courage and insight could come from unexpected places. The first challenge came sooner than expected. A network of traitorous agents had infiltrated the palace's lower levels, intending to sabotage the food and energy supplies. If successful, the palace could be forced to surrender without a single battle. "We need to move quickly," Elias said, scanning a map projected from a small device. "They have divided their forces. If we act wisely, we can intercept them before they cause real damage." The Empress followed his lead, trusting the human's judgment. They moved silently through the narrow corridors, passing doors that had once been locked with codes only she could access. Elias manipulated the locks with ease, proving once again that human adaptability could overcome even the most complex alien systems. As they approached the first sabotage point, a faint glow appeared down the hallway. 3 figures were crouched near the control panels, their long limbs and sharp eyes working quickly. Elias gestured for the Empress to stay back. "I will handle this," he whispered. With precise movements, Elias used the environment to his advantage. Shadows concealed his approach, and the faint hum of the control panels masked his footsteps. When he reached the saboteurs, he acted decisively, tripping one with a small, carefully placed device and startling the others into revealing their presence. The Empress watched from the shadows, impressed by his calm under pressure. In moments, the threat was neutralized. The saboteurs were restrained using non-lethal methods, and the palace systems were restored. Elias turned to the Empress with a slight smile. "Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. Humans often think in ways others do not expect." The Empress nodded. "And sometimes courage alone is enough to change the outcome of events. You have both." As dawn approached, they moved to the next area of concern. The city itself seemed to sense the tension, the usual hum of life replaced by a cautious silence. Citizens peered from windows and balconies, watching shadows move in the streets. Some recognized the Empress's figure and whispered hope into the night, while others feared the chaos promised by the Council's betrayal. Elias and the Empress reached a strategic command center hidden deep beneath the palace. Here they could observe the movements of the traitorous forces and plan their next steps. Holographic maps shimmered in the air, showing troop placements, security cameras, and communication lines. "Your Majesty," Elias said, pointing to a cluster of lights on the map. "These are the main agents coordinating the rebellion. If we can disrupt their communication, we can slow their advance and give the loyal citizens a chance to act." The Empress studied the map carefully. "And if we fail?" Elias met her gaze steadily. "We will not fail. Humans may be underestimated, but we are adaptable. We think creatively and act decisively. And I will not leave your side." For the first time, the Empress felt a sense of relief mixed with admiration. She had faced countless rebellions in her long life, yet the certainty in a human's loyalty was unlike anything she had experienced. Humans were unpredictable in their courage, yet unwavering in their commitment when they chose to act. They devised a plan. Elias would infiltrate the communication nodes, rerouting the signals to expose the traitors' positions to loyal forces. The Empress would remain in the command center, coordinating the palace's defenses and ensuring that citizens who wished to support her could do so safely. The mission required split-second timing and absolute trust. Elias moved first, slipping through the shadows and using every skill he had to bypass security measures. Alien traps and detection systems had been designed to deter intruders, but he adapted, using ingenuity and instinct to navigate the complex network. Meanwhile, the Empress watched the city's defenses. She sent messages to loyal guards, warning them of movements she could detect but Elias could not. Her mind worked like a finely tuned instrument, balancing risk and strategy while relying on the human to execute the plan. Elias reached the main communication node and began rerouting signals. It was delicate work, requiring precision and calm under pressure. Any mistake could alert the traitors and endanger the entire operation. His hands moved quickly, guided by instinct and intelligence as he manipulated the alien systems with skill that even veteran engineers would envy. Suddenly, an alert flashed. A squad of traitorous agents had detected an anomaly and were moving toward his location. Elias did not panic. Using his surroundings, he created diversions, tripping automated defenses and luring the intruders into traps. One by one, they were subdued, unable to comprehend how a single human could outmaneuver them. Back in the command center, the Empress watched the operation unfold with a mixture of amazement and pride. Elias's human ingenuity complemented her centuries of experience. Together, they formed a partnership that bridged species, knowledge, and instinct. By the time the sun rose over the horizon, the city had begun to stir. The loyal citizens, inspired by the Empress's visible presence and the mysterious interventions that thwarted the traitors, began to take action. They reported suspicious activities, reinforced defenses, and slowly regained confidence that the Empress still commanded power and respect. The Empress turned to Elias, her scales shimmering softly in the morning light. "You have done more than I could have imagined. You are not just loyal, you are wise, courageous, and remarkable in ways I did not expect." Elias shook his head. "I only did what was necessary. You taught me that courage is more than action, it is choice, and I chose to stand by you." For a moment, the weight of the Empire's future seemed less daunting. The path ahead remained fraught with danger and uncertainty, but they had proven that even against overwhelming odds, courage and loyalty could change the course of events. In the coming days, Elias and the Empress would face even greater challenges. The traitors would regroup, new threats would emerge, and the delicate balance of the Empire would hang by a thread. But now they knew something vital. One human's courage, combined with an Empress's wisdom, could ignite hope in a world where betrayal had seemed inevitable. And in the quiet moments, when the city slept beneath the twin moons, the Empress would reflect on the lesson she had learned. That strength was not measured solely in power or years of rule, but in the unwavering loyalty of one who chooses to remain when everyone else abandons you. Elias, standing beside her, was that choice, that unwavering presence, and in a galaxy filled with doubt, betrayal, and ambition, that choice was more powerful than any army, more inspiring than any decree, and more enduring than the stars themselves. The Empress and Elias had spent days reinforcing the palace and uncovering hidden plots. But as they worked, the Empire outside simmered with tension. Rumors of the Empress's weakness had spread far and wide, emboldening rebel factions. Yet Elias remained resolute, his human determination unwavering, reminding the Empress that courage could outshine fear. "This city is tense," the Empress said, standing on a balcony overlooking the deserted streets. "I can feel the unease in the air. If we are not careful, even the loyal citizens may lose faith." Elias nodded. "We must give them reason to hope. Fear spreads fast, but so can courage. People follow those who act when others hesitate." The Empress studied him. Humans were simple in appearance, yet their hearts held a complexity she was only beginning to understand. Elias's willingness to face danger without hesitation, his ability to see opportunities others missed, these were qualities her species often lacked. "We will need more than courage," she said. "We need strategy and someone to act when plans go wrong." "That's where I come in," Elias replied with a faint smile. Their plan was bold. The traitors had amassed hidden forces in the lower districts, preparing to strike when the Empress's defenses seemed weakest. Elias suggested they use misinformation to expose the rebels to the loyal citizens, turning public opinion in their favor. Over the next few hours, Elias moved with precision. Using the palace's communication systems, he sent coded messages to loyal factions, hinting at traitor movements and rallying support. Meanwhile, the Empress prepared to make a public appearance, not as a ruler in fear, but as a leader who had faced abandonment and chosen to stand firm. When the time came, the Empress emerged on the palace steps, her presence commanding attention. Citizens gathered, curious and cautious. Whispers spread through the crowd. The Empress had not fled. She had not abandoned them. And beside her stood a human, small but unwavering, his calm demeanor radiating confidence. Elias stepped forward to support her. "Today," he said, "we face those who betray not because they are strong, but because they are afraid. The Empress has been abandoned by some, but she has not been defeated. And we will show the Empire that loyalty, courage, and truth can overcome fear." The crowd reacted, murmurs rising to cheers. For the first time in days, hope stirred among the people. The traitors, watching from the shadows, realized their plan was crumbling. But Elias knew the danger was far from over. A group of rebel agents, sensing exposure, rushed toward the palace, intending to capture the Empress and discredit her before the citizens could rally. Elias did not panic. Using human ingenuity and quick thinking, he manipulated the palace defenses, creating illusions of movement and sound to mislead the attackers. The Empress followed his lead, coordinating with loyal guards and citizens who had been inspired to act. Together, they formed a defense that was part strategy, part courage, and entirely unexpected. The battle was brief but intense. The rebels were confused by Elias's tactics and overwhelmed by the coordinated resistance. The Empress remained calm, her authority unquestioned, guiding her forces with clarity and composure. In the end, the traitors fled, leaving the city and palace in the hands of those who remained loyal. The Empress turned to Elias afterward, her eyes reflecting pride and gratitude. "You have done more than I could imagine. Not through strength alone, but through strategy, courage, and loyalty. You are remarkable, human." Elias shook his head. "I only did what anyone loyal would do. I did not abandon you. That was enough." And in that moment, the Empress realized the truth of human resilience. They were underestimated, often dismissed as weak, but their courage and loyalty could shift the balance of empires. Elias had shown her that one human could stand as a pillar of hope when all others faltered. As night fell over the city, the Empress and Elias surveyed the streets. Citizens moved with newfound confidence, the murmur of hope replacing whispers of fear. The palace no longer seemed deserted. It was alive with possibility, strengthened by the bond between a human and an alien Empress who had chosen to trust him. Elias placed a hand on the Empress's shoulder. "This is only the beginning," he said. "We will face more challenges, but we have shown that courage and loyalty can inspire others, and together we can protect the empire." The Empress nodded, understanding for the first time that true power was not merely in authority or armies, but in trust, courage, and the decision to stand by one another even in the darkest times. And so, in the quiet of the night, a human and an Empress prepared to face the trials ahead, united by choice, courage, and the knowledge that loyalty could change the course of history. The following days were filled with preparation. The Empress knew the traitors would not give up easily. Rumors of rebellion continued, and small pockets of resistance persisted across the city. But this time she was ready, not alone but with Elias by her side. "Do you think we can truly restore trust?" she asked, her voice steady but thoughtful. Elias looked out over the palace courtyard where loyal citizens gathered to help with repairs and security. "We can, but we must act wisely and show that leadership is not about fear. It's about courage, fairness, and standing for what is right." The Empress nodded. She had ruled through centuries of diplomacy, conflict, and intrigue. Yet it was a human's perspective, simple, direct, and fearless, that illuminated the path forward. They began by reaching out to loyal citizens, sharing the truth of the council's betrayal. Evidence collected by Elias and palace allies exposed those who had sought power over loyalty. The people, inspired by the courage of their Empress and the ingenuity of the human who stood by her, rallied to defend the city and uphold justice. As word spread, alien citizens who had once hesitated returned to support the Empress. Traders, scholars, and soldiers, all those who had remained uncertain, now saw the Empress's wisdom and strength, reinforced by the loyalty of a single human who had never wavered. The council members who had betrayed her were cornered. Some tried to flee, while others attempted to manipulate citizens against her. But the evidence, combined with the loyalty demonstrated by Elias and the Empress's steadfast leadership, left them powerless. They were given a choice: face justice or reform. Many chose reform, understanding that fear could no longer dictate the empire's future. Through it all, Elias remained at the Empress's side. He did not seek reward or recognition, only the chance to stand for what was right. And the Empress, who had faced centuries of challenge and betrayal, realized the value of such loyalty. One human had reminded her that true leadership was not measured by power alone, but by the courage to act justly and inspire others to follow. With the rebellion quelled and trust slowly restored, the city began to heal. Streets once tense with suspicion now hummed with life. Citizens worked together to repair damaged structures, organize defenses, and rebuild the community. The Empress observed with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the bond between her and Elias had sparked a movement of courage that spread across the empire. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, casting golden light over the towers of the palace, the Empress and Elias stood together on the balcony. The city stretched before them, vibrant and alive, a symbol of resilience and hope. "You have changed the course of this empire," she said, her voice soft but filled with emotion, "not through power alone, but through loyalty, courage, and heart. I owe you more than I can express." Elias shook his head, smiling faintly. "I only did what any loyal human would do. You reminded me that courage is a choice, and I chose to stay." The Empress looked out over the city, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The Empire had been tested, but it had survived. And in its survival, she saw a future shaped not by fear, ambition, or betrayal, but by courage, loyalty, and the bond between species. The people, inspired by the Empress's unwavering leadership and the human who stood beside her, began to see a new era, one where justice, courage, and hope guided their actions. The galaxy beyond would notice too. Word of the Empress's resilience, aided by a single human, spread among neighboring systems, reminding all that strength is not measured only by numbers or weapons, but by the choices individuals make in the face of adversity. Elias looked at the Empress, their eyes meeting in understanding. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Together we can face whatever comes next." The Empress nodded. "Yes, together we will lead not with fear, but with hope. And the galaxy will remember that even in the darkest times, loyalty and courage can shine brighter than any star." As the night fell, the twin moons reflected their light over the city, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward the stars. And in those shadows, the Empress and a single human remained, a symbol of unwavering resolve, a testament to the power of courage, and a reminder to all that even one person can change the course of history. The Empire was not just restored, it was reborn. And the story of a human who refused to abandon an alien Empress became legend, inspiring generations to come.